Rick Mitchell, and this is To The Point. Welcome to another amazing episode. It is Wednesday. It is hump day, as they say. I don't know who says it, but people say that. So we're going to go with it today here on To The Point. It's a fun week. It is got one more week of September. Fall is here, so we're excited for fall. Hey, everybody loves fall. Fall is amazing. The seasons change, the leaves change, everything changes. I guess some of the people in the South are like, we don't know what you're talking about. Head to the Northwest or head to the Northeast and you'll see seasons change. It's pretty cool. And there's, rain in the forecast, which is great. Hopefully get these fires completely under control. It's the last week of the regular season for Major League Baseball, so there is some normalcy in the line. But to get uttered that we're still finishing out the Western Conference and Eastern Conference finals in the NBA. We're well on our way to week 3 of the NFL after a crazy week 2. I mean, come on, folks. Still today on Wednesday, I'm blown away by the injury rosters that we're seeing. So keep in mind tomorrow here on Biz TV, we've got the To The Point Sports Desk where we're going to talk and recap a injury-filled crazy week 2 and talk about what's coming up in week 3. We're going to give some insight into what we've seen so far in the Western Conference and Eastern Conference finals in the NBA. We're going to talk about the WNBA playoffs, talk about what is going on with Major League Soccer, because that league is doing well, and cover the Stanley Cup, which, yes, folks, the Stanley Cup is going on. It is sports galore. Also, keep in mind this weekend that the SEC and the ACC kick off of their college football schedule, and in just a few short weeks, we will have the Big Ten joining the mix. It's college football all over the place, so Saturdays and Sundays full of football for you. But before we hop ahead into the end of the week, let's talk about who we have here today. If you probably heard about podcasting, right? Raise your hand if you haven't heard about podcasting. And amazing things have happened over the last 6 months. Besides COVID and everything else that's going on, fighter tornadoes, shark tornadoes, a little bit of craziness, social justice, inequality, just everything that's bad, plus election 2020. But one of the bright spots has been podcasting and how much it's grown in our country and across the world. Some of the largest podcasts on the planet to include Lewis Howes, Ed Milet, John Lee Dumas, Amy Porterfield. The list goes on, but the biggest name in the bunch was Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan has been in the news in the last 2 weeks where Joe came out and said, hey, we should have Vice President Biden and President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, sit down and do a 3 to 4 hour debate with Joe Rogan as the moderator. Now, many people in Joe Rogan's camp really want to see this happen. A lot of people who follow his show, the most popular podcast on the planet, and also signed a major contract worth just over $200 million to bring JRE Experience, or the Joe Rogan Experience, to Spotify. So we have so much going on when it talks to podcasts. So our first guest today is the amazing and impeccable veteran of the United States Air Force, Mr. Matt Kachera. Now, Matt is the host of the highly successful and highly rated Vet Pivot podcast, which you can catch on any place that you find podcasts. Go check Apple Music, Google Podcasts, or of course Spotify. You can download it there and become a fan. I highly encourage you to do that. Matt is an amazing Air Force veteran who created this podcast to help veterans in transition. But when COVID-19 struck in his first season, he decided to step up his game and help everybody who's looking for a job, maybe transitioning or looking for employment, to do just that. I'm bringing him on the show because I want to learn about what it took to create a podcast, how he created this dream. So more creatives out there, if you want to start a podcast, Matt is the guy that you want to listen to. Next up, we're keeping it in the family with the Air Force. We have the amazing reservist and lieutenant colonel for the United States Air Force, airline pilot. He's a captain for a major airline here in the United States, and a phenomenal keynote speaker. The wonderful O.Harris will be joining us, and we're going to be talking about how COVID has struck the airlines and how we see a road to recovery and why it's key that we keep the airlines going. I hope that you guys look forward to joining us today on this amazing show that we're really excited to bring you guys today. So, without further ado, let's bring our first guest to the show. After these commercial messages, we're going to bring our first guest to the show, my good friend and Vet Pivot host, Matt Kachera.
Your love
welcome to the show, Matt. How are you doing today?
Eric, long time no talk. Very excited to be on the show. Thank you for having me.
Yep. And as a reminder, everybody, we have today, this is obviously to the point, and our guest, I don't know, sometimes I forget when I come back from the intro of the show. I just need to remind people, our guest today, our first guest today is veteran podcast host, and veteran meaning he's a podcaster, but he's also an Air Force veteran. This is Matt Kachera. So you can check out season 1 of Vet Pivot wherever you find podcasts. So I'll say Spotify and Apple, and then you guys figure out the rest of them, but those are the two biggest. I think those are the two biggest, wouldn't you say, as a podcaster?
Yeah, absolutely. That's those are the money makers right there. And then obviously Google Podcasts is pretty good too.
Oh, I didn't even know Google had podcasts. So let's talk about this real fast. So you started podcasting September, a year ago, September, right?
Yeah, it was the middle of August, and launched on August 16th of 2019, and really just trying to make a difference in a few veterans' lives and bring them some stories of inspiration of veterans that have made it and made the successful transition out of the military and gone off to do great things in a bunch of different fields. But never in my wildest dreams did I think, you know what, I'm just going to keep going. Let's do another season. So
that's awesome.
Weathered a lot of adversity, Eric, as you well know.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this, while we talk about podcasting. So you launched it. We're going to go back to what it's like in season 1 where you started it. And a lot of people are talking about launching podcasts. You see a lot of amazing podcasts launched. But what a lot of people are buzzing about right now has been since June, when Spotify announced its ridiculous acquisition of the most popular podcast on the planet, the Joe Rogan Experience, which is huge. New set. He's in Austin. The listenership's up. But I'd love your thoughts as a podcaster. People are upset because to listen to Joe's podcast on Spotify, which come December, I believe, it'll be exclusively Spotify. You have to have a Spotify account. You have to have a paid account with them. That's how they. So what do you think about that? I mean, having your podcast, people paying to see it. Do you think that that's a good thing for podcasters? Like, to me, you guys get paid on it because I've talked to Spotify and they're like, yeah, if they're premium people, it's like being on YouTube and hitting that quality, right? With YouTube, it's 4,000 view hours, 1,000 subscribers. You hit that, you make money. Now, it's not a bunch of money. Obviously, your views compared to the mighty JRE Experience, a little different. I mean, the same good quality. I mean, you're not stoned out of your gourd on the show, and it's not 3.5 hours long, and Post Malone's not chain smoking on your show.
That's right. Yeah.
Your show is better for everyone's health, clearly. But I mean, what's your thoughts on people where the way podcasting is now moving into places like Spotify, where people have to be on these premium plans?
I think it's a good movement. It's a good migration for the platform of podcasting, and anyone that's serious about it will look at it and say, this is good. We're going to gain some of the same notoriety and recognition that YouTubers gathered in the last 10 to 15 years. And that's a big deal. So someone like Joe Rogan taking the torch and moving that forward, whether he has, Joey Diaz on there saying disgusting things about his time in the heyday of comedy, or if it was, Post Malone and him, mushroom tripping on on a live episode, whatever, but at the same time, he's got so many followers. And, I think for someone like him to do a deal with Spotify really sends a message that there's a lot of value in the advertising dollar on a podcast and the community that you speak to and the intimacy that there is behind the listener and the host. And, if I'm a company, the metrics out there do support throwing some advertising bucks towards your popular podcasters that are speaking to your market.
That's true. So let's go back to you. Vet Pivot finished its first season.
Sure.
You took a little bit of a summer hiatus, which is fine. A lot of shows do that. There's nothing wrong with that. You're a family man. You went through a lot, and you've gone through a lot in 2020. We're not going to get into that here on the show, but you've had your own. You've dealt with your own losses in 2020. And you launched a show. So what has it been like, my friend, launching a podcast that you ended up like October going, okay, people like the show, they're listening. Yeah, and you've had amazing people on your show. Even in October, you had amazing. You made a mistake in November and put some other guy on. I don't know who the hell invited me on the show,
We
but
made
you
up for
did.
that by putting his wife on the show,
Yeah,
just
I
so you
made up
know.
for it.
Yeah.
I made it better looking by putting her on, and it sounds better when she's on. Somebody way more intelligent than me being on the show. But so you launch this, and you get to that point. We've done it here at To the Point, where you're like, okay, people like it. We're gonna keep it around,
Yeah.
and we're gonna put some real production value into this now. And then 2020 rolls in, which feels like 80 decades ago, my friend.
Right.
And funny story, everybody here, no, Matt and I went out to dinner in February
Right.
2020. There's pictures and proof. It was like the last time we were around humans. Like it was,
That's right.
we were out. We had a great night. It rained in New York. It was an awesome experience. By the way, we walked down the street that they filmed John Wick 3 on. Just true story. It's real talk right there, just so everybody knows. That was a big moment in my life when I flew home from that and watching John Wick 3. I was like, we were on that street. I got to tell Matt.
There.
We were there. John Wick wasn't. But what has it been like producing, putting out content, making a podcast, it doing well during COVID-19, and to the point where you come back and you're like, hey, we're going to launch a second season, and it's going to be bigger and better, like season 1 on steroids. What's it like going through that, taking a hiatus, which a lot of shows do? There's nothing wrong. Summer seasons always happen. And then you come back with this new firepower. So what's that been like? And kind of tell the folks what they can expect with season 2.
Sure. Yeah. It was, first of all, great time in New York. That was, you're bringing up good memories here. So, it was crazy. When the COVID thing went down, we were just making our way back from going to the New Media Summit and meeting with a whole bunch of folks that, potentially could be booked as guests on our show, getting booked on other shows. So it was, there was a lot of hype, and the show felt, like it was really about to take off. And then 2020 happened, that's, I think is what a lot of people say. Right. So, it was tough from that standpoint. But what I found as a podcaster is a lot of people, you're already doing your interviews remotely. And so you had a lot of people that had more time to get on a Zoom or get on a Skype or get on, jump in a StreamYard broadcast and make something happen. So it really just kind of leaned into what we were already doing. And we took that and decided to boost the amount of shows that we were doing, and got all the way up to, we did 70 shows, did a few live episodes, a few panels, and had a good time and learned a lot of tough lessons in season 1 of what to do, what not to do, how to book, how not to book, what do you do, how many shows should you have in the hopper just in case someone cancels on you last minute. And so there are things that go into it, sound quality issues with a guest and video issues. So we took those lessons learned in, over the summer hiatus. We did a little bit of soul searching and re-strategizing. What do you want the show to look like? How can we continue to drive value to veterans and non-veterans that tune in? Yeah. And decided a few key changes need to be made. One, we're adding video to the platform, right? So Vet Pivot's not just audio only. Now you can go and look at every episode will be available the day prior to the podcast launch, the audio podcast launch, on YouTube on the Vet Pivot channel. The second thing that we're going to do is no guest, no problem. It's a new strategy, but no guest, no problem. There are going to be some shows where I'm going to take time and just talk about things that need to be talked about. Like, hey, look, this is the deal. You think you don't have time in the military or as a professional, civilian professional to go to school. That's a fallacy. Here's the way that you can get through that and actually continue your education and provide yourself a next step for growth in your career. So that's just one example of a way that, a type of topic that I'll jump into to kind of bring more value to the community. And it's going to be good. I think that we'll have more room for live shows, more room for panels going forward as well. But very excited and, very humbled by the amount of people that reached out during that 6 weeks that I took off to see if I was okay, just me as a person. And I think that speaks to the podcast community.
Yeah, I think that's a whole. People should reach out if there's something going on. It was real quick. I talk to you probably, if not every week, at least every 2 weeks via, text.
Yeah.
We're pretty close that way. But, it is good to check up on you because you notice when shows aren't going on, they're in your queue, and, it's one of those things you're like, oh, crap, that show's not on. Where the heck is it? And, if you don't have, summer hiatuses, I mean, you touched on it. When we come back from the break, I want to touch on it a little bit more because you mentioned soul searching in your show, which is interesting because I find a lot of people kind of get to that point with this. Nobody really understands what it takes to create content, whether it's once a week or like some crazy psychopaths do every day, weekdays. Yeah, it's fun. It's like, let's create more content. People don't understand what it goes through. It takes a lot out of your time. It's a lot. It's not the hard work of doing it. If you love what you do, it's not hard. It's the backside of it, the production, getting it out, and wanting to make sure you're giving your audience, your crowd, your followers something to be like, heck yeah. So when we come back from the break, we're going to continue this conversation with Mr. Matt Kachera. And while we're going to the break, while we're at the commercial, head over to Spotify or Apple Music or Google Podcasts and check out Vet Pivot and subscribe to it so you won't miss that launch coming up here soon. And we'll have that and more coming up after the break. And we're back here at To The Point, and again, we have our guest, Matt Kachera, the host of Vet Pivot, an amazing podcast, kind of vet-centric. Not all guests are veterans, focuses a lot on vet transition. You can see a lot of high-level veterans that are in there, from Rudy Reyes, who's everybody loves Rudy. I mean, who doesn't love Rudy? You've interviewed some pretty big-name folks, amazing content guy, Rich. I always almost called him Rich Kuchera. That is not his name unless you adopted him, and I'm pretty sure Rich would be like, no, I'm not adopted by you. Rich Cordona, who makes amazing content on LinkedIn. So before the break, you talked about this wonderful thing called, soul searching with your show.
Right.
And a lot of people go through that. So let's dive into that, if you don't mind, kind of.
Sure.
What led you to that? Like, you had amazing shows. I mean, 20,000 downloads, right, in season 1? I mean...
Yeah. I
mean, those are incredible numbers. So brother, you're at top of the mountain. What soul searching did you need to do? I mean, you can't climb higher than Everest. You're on Everest. Everyone in the vet community talks about you. You have the who's who. Kind of explain the need for soul searching on this.
Yeah, that's a great question. And, in episode 1 of season 2, I kind of get into it in great detail. But it's in a roundabout way. I kind of hit a walk-off home run with episode 70 of season 1. Andy Manzi from Warrior Surf Foundation. It broke all kinds of records for, 7-day downloads, overall downloads, number of shares. The show did great. And I'm thinking to myself, well, this was really good. And this is a good way to kind of hit pause and reflect on, am I going the right direction, right? Am I really doing a service to my listening community, and can I maintain this pace that I'm on? I think when you're a podcaster, one of the hardest things is getting those listeners. The reason why we bring guests onto our show is not just because of their story, but also in the hopes that you get access to their community and their people as well. And through that, you'll pick up new listeners that end up wanting to stick around and hear more episodes of your show. They tell your friends about it. It gets shared around, and thus you grow your audience. And we really struggle, I think podcasters really struggle with getting their guests to share. Right, getting their guests to get their community excited about them being on your show enough to go check out your community. And it's, it's one of those things that if you talk to anyone that books people on podcasts, they're going to tell that person that they booked on the show, hey, number one thing you need to do, if you ever want to get an invite back, you need to share this with your people. And so that just wasn't happening as often as I liked. And it made me question, well, the people I'm bringing on are they as invested in veterans as I am? Because right now they're not helping me get this out to veterans. So it seems like they're more invested in themselves. Um, and that's not what I signed up for. I signed up to podcast to reach as many people that are interested in helping the veteran to civilian transition as possible. Hence the soul searching was, okay, if I'm going to do this again, I really need to do it my way, make sure I'm impacting the community, make sure I'm bringing value to the people that I feel indentured to serve. So I think we're in a good place with that with season 2. Very excited about the approach. Very excited about giving an opportunity to a new cast of guests to come on and talk to us. I'll drop a few names. I have Andrew Beltran, who is one of the founders of Original Grain. It's a small little watch company started by 2 Marine brothers. So that's an exciting one. I have a few other ones. Tommy McConnell is coming back from season 1. He's coming back onto season 2 to celebrate 6 years of 15 Fathoms, which is a veteran clothing brand, which those are always popular. And and there's more. There's more to come for sure. But that's just kind of what's on the horizon. I have a psychologist, Dr. Shauna Springer, who wrote a book called Warrior: How to Help Those Who Serve Us. It's going to be good. It's a good show that I can get really excited about.
That's awesome, man. It's good to see success. I mean, it can be frustrating. I mean, in life, everybody forgets, even as podcasters, especially when you hit the ball out of the ballpark. And I love that you called it a home run, because you did. I thought every episode that you made was better than the last, except for having me on, though. That was your worst episode. But you definitely did a great job with that. So it's good that you did the soul searching, and I think always refreshing and coming back. I think it's funny you talk about it doing it in seasons, and I'm chuckling to myself while you're saying that. I'm like, I do that what feels like every week or once a month with the show, where I'm like, we need to change that. I don't like that. I want to make it better. So actually feeding the audience is real important. But you did touch on something that I do want to touch on, and it's true. People who are guests on shows, whether they be podcast or national TV like this, but smaller national TV. I'm not saying Biz TV is growing. We're very proud to be part of the Biz TV family. But to be on it, we reach several million households. And those who are watching right now, thank you. But make sure while you're watching, this is Matt Kachera from Vet Pivot, and you need to go follow his podcast. But it's funny how sometimes people come on your show and they don't share it. It's like, wait a minute, we're helping your brand. You're reaching a lot of people. Yeah. Share my show. This is how you build content. And we're lucky. We've had big name guests, Montel and other human beings coming on the show. Hey, Matt Kachera being on your show is a big deal. True story. Well, at least to us, it's a big story. But yay!
Thank you.
But it is important. So it's great that you touched on that. So before you go, I do want to make sure that you plug away. So first season 2 drops when? When's the first episode drop?
So season 2 dropped last week. Episode 1. Yes. Yeah. So it just and kind of quiet, not a big ticker tape parade type release, but it was that's just because I kind of warm up and introduce what's going to be expected. So episode 2 dropped on Friday. Episode 3 will drop later. It dropped on Monday, and then we'll have episode 4. So we're doing Mondays and Fridays, I guess. Probably the easiest way to answer. So we just got started, and Mondays and Fridays the show will drop.
Awesome. And are you looking for guests? So if people want to be guests, know somebody to be a guest, what is the best way to kind of send those over? Obviously, they know how to connect with you. You're looking at the link right now. You know that you can go to Vet Pivot and go check it out and listen to it. But if you want to be a guest, what's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, just shoot me an email, just matt@vetpivot.com, and I will respond. You want to be a guest on the show, you have it in your heart to reach out to veterans or business professionals that are looking to make career transitions, whatever the audience is. Let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation. I know a ton of podcasters as well, so if my show doesn't fit the demographic I'm trying to reach, there's a very good chance that I know a podcaster that does. So just give me a shout.
That is awesome. So, ladies and gentlemen, Matt, I want to thank you. Again, Matt Kachera, from the host of Vet Pivot. Season 2 just launched last week. A new episode dropped this past Friday. Make sure you go catch up so you can binge listen or binge watch. And also check them out. You're on YouTube, you mentioned, so go. We always love it.
That's
so
right.
Besides smashing the subscribe button here, go smash his subscribe button. I'm pretty sure he'd love a nice subscriber to YouTube. It's important we do that. So, Matt, thanks for joining us. We'll have to have you back next month, bud.
Absolutely. Thanks, Eric.
So, folks, when we come back, we are going to have Air Force veteran. It's an Air Force theme today. Yes, it is. Absolutely an Air Force theme here on To The Point. We are going to have Air Force vet and amazing keynote speaker, inspirational speaker, the one and only Jason Harris. He is also a captain working for the airlines industry. So we're going to talk a little bit the airlines industry and how it's been affected and impacted for COVID-19. So when we come back from the break, we're going to have this and a lot more coming up next. Welcome back to The Point. I'm your host, Eric Mitchell, and it's a great Wednesday show we have going for you today. Amazing guest that we just came from with the amazing Matt Kachera, Air Force, and we're going to keep the theme for the Air Force going here on the show today. We have Lieutenant Colonel, yes, Lieutenant Colonel in the Air Force Reserves, the wonderful Jason Harris joining us, and Jason is a captain for working for a large United States-based airliner. So we're going to talk a little bit of everything going on today in America, the airline industry, diversity. We're going to cover all the fun topics that you hear in the news today. So let's welcome to the show, Jason Harris. Jason, how you doing, bud?
Beautiful day to be alive. Thanks for having me, Eric. Exciting time in the world right now, brother.
It is. You know, the last time you and I had a long conversation, it dealt with the airlines, but somebody had stolen a plane from SeaTac and was doing freaking aerials with it, and made for a fun day at the office for you, because I believe you were on reserve duty that day. So that's how you walked into your Friday, with some dude doing loop-de-loops between, Joint Base McChord and Seattle. I'm sure that was a fun day for you, I'm sure. Huh?
Yeah, that was definitely an exciting day. It was not the standard office day, to say the least. From my perspective as an airline pilot, as well as a military officer in my duties. And so, yeah, it provided a ton of entertainment, as you can only imagine. Some guy deciding to hop in the cockpit of an airplane that he doesn't know how to fly and deciding that he wants to try to do a backflip. Yeah.
I mean, that had to be tough for you. The more I think about it, like when you told me about it, like, because we heard the birds fly out of here. Them F-15s got out of here quick. And I know people put, they were triggered by the sound. The planes, I'm like, that protects the entire western seaboard. We're like we like those birds around here. But, you as an airline pilot, and also here you are, you were a pilot in the Air Force, you're a lieutenant colonel. That had to be kind of one of those things like, how in the world does somebody, number one, from a major airport, SeaTac's not some little rinky-dink airport. I mean, it's Seattle. It's a very big city, very big airport, very well known. Somebody hopped in a bird and just joyriding it around. I mean, post 9/11, that's some banana stuff, and that airport is not far from Seattle itself. So, and you have Joint Base McChord, which is a stone throw away from there, and Boeing, which has its own runway.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, before we get started, was that crazy? Was there a lot in your brain going, how does a person get in? I mean, getting on an airplane is not easy, and just pulling it away from the gate. I mean, that's a whole procedure. I mean,
yeah. So the funny thing is like he wasn't at a gate. They were actually kind of doing some maintenance on the aircraft, so near a different place, and he took off from a taxiway. And so, of course, like you said, as an airline pilot, if I'm sitting on the ramp that day or in operations trying to plan a flight, or I'm getting ready to land, any of those scenarios as an airline pilot, like that's kind of like, wait a minute, dude, somebody is joking. This is absolutely must be like hidden TV or something crazy. This is a pre-planned exercise that the military must be doing. And then from the military side, you're kind of going, okay, I'm in the office and we run exercises all the time for these type of events. So this must be an exercise. And all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, guys, no, this isn't an exercise. This is the real deal. When the FAA comes up, air traffic control comes up on the radios, and then we have some other indicators that say, hey, dude, all jokes aside, this is the real deal. This is not an exercise. Like, your brain takes a moment to go, okay, wait, this is for real. Let's go. But it only takes a few minutes, a few seconds for our brains to kick in. And then from that point, it's like, let's get after it. Let's do our job that we got to do. And like you said, those F-15s taken off out of Klamath Falls, dude, that's their job. Like, at the end of the day, they went afterburner because their job is to ensure the security of our nation, and that was at stake on that particular day.
And those boys did their job. Those brave men and women, they did a darn good job. I've heard the radio traffic afterwards. That dude had no idea how close he was. I mean, he ended up taking his own life, but it made me laugh, some of the things that I heard. I mean, I'm worried about anti-aircraft guns at McCord. They might be mad at me when I land there. Yeah, they probably will be. Yep, very accurate.
Yeah,
you stole a plane and you're going to land on a military base. Yeah, you're probably not going to be greeted with a ticker tape parade. If that's what you're going for, you're going to fail.
Exactly. I mean, there's so much levity to it, right? Like, in the capacity of what we do, the human side, the reality side, like, we have to give it the levity. But like you said, it's also kind of comical because, like, who does that? And then at one point he's laughing, he's joking, and the next point he's talking about he's afraid. And then he's saying things that just don't make any sense, right? And you kind of got to go, wait a minute. Again, like, who would even remotely contemplate doing something crazy like that?
That's true. But then you probably thought, that's the craziest thing I'm going to have to face after facing what you faced overseas on your deployments and flying. I mean, you weren't doing that high-level Air Force stuff where you guys fly 8,000 miles above those of us on the ground. You were doing that low-level, trying to see how many enemy could try to take pot shots at you, and, you love flying low to the ground. So that, you've dealt with this and that, and then 2020 comes and says, hold my beer. Let's completely devastate the airlines industry, the retail industry, and the food industry. So you are a captain for a large airline here in the United States. What has it been like? Because you said that you were one of the last flights from Latin America before COVID completely shut down. Now, what's your thoughts? I mean, how has it been for you going from flying quite often? Watch your cockpit chronicles, as I call them. I know that's not what they're called, but you can follow Jason online and see what I'm talking about. But you do these amazing videos, which is kind of cool because you kind of get your viewpoint, but come on, you have the coolest location ever. It's like Gary Vee the other day on Good Morning America standing on the world, the towers, and you have like New York in the background. You're in a cockpit. I think that's like the golden view for all of us who fly a lot. Like, that's a good view.
Exactly.
So what has it been like, COVID in 2020 for you in this in an industry that's clearly been, decimated by COVID-19?
Yeah, the impact of our industry has been just incredible, and not in a good way. And as in many industries across our nation, across the world, the impact has been quite tragic. We've had tens of thousands of people who have chosen to retire early. We've had tens of thousands of people who have had to quit their jobs or had to leave their jobs, and those that have been furloughed from their jobs. And so it's been real tragic. And so at the end of the day, we are designed as the airline industry, we are part of the backbone of the fabric and infrastructure of the economic success of this country. And so when you think about, if you completely lose the airline industry, what that further does to the economic structure of our nation, as well as the global economy. So yes, we have suffered as members of the aviation industry, as employees of the aviation industry, from pilots to the flight crews, to the ground crews, to gate agents, to everyone in the airline industry. We have absolutely been personally impacted and affected. But beyond that, I think it's important that people understand that the economic impact, should the airline industry shutter, that's going to reverberate not just in the industry itself, but across the nation and across the globe, because the aviation industry as a whole helps to prop up that global economy. And so it's really important that people understand that as we look to figure out how do we recover in the midst of 2020, like you said, saying, dude, hold my beer.
I love that because it's so true. I mean, just the way that 2020 has been, but your industry, you guys kind of feel it all. And now you guys are flying again, which is great. I've traveled. I know a lot of people have traveled. You're like, dude, I travel all the time. That's why I'm a pilot. But when you look at it, you see people, the rules that all the airlines have, wearing a mask, which is something most of us are like, if that's what I have to do to get from point A to point B, I'll wear it. And yeah, it may not be your favorite. Of course, it's not something you're used to. Some of us have spent over 40 years of our life not wearing a mask, so it's something new. But you get over it basically really quick, because if I want to get to New York or to Florida or name location, I'll wear a mask. It's not that bad. You suck it up. But you have people behaving badly online. And obviously you are a captain of a bird, so that puts you in charge. You're also a lieutenant colonel, which I'm sure that clicks into your head when you have unruly people who think that they're above it, or you have to deal with it. But you also probably have to deal with diversity in 2020, because 2020 wasn't good enough for COVID-19. It was like, no. We're going to have fire tornadoes. We're going to have an illness. We're going to have fires that decimate the West Coast, where smoke inhales everything. And hold on, we're going to have equality as one of the biggest focal points of most of our lives, who most of us were not alive in the 60s. We don't know anything about it, and we've grown up very diverse and not thinking of it, but some parts of our country and some people that live in our country believe that certain people need to stay on their lane. Now, flying in an airline, you guys see diversity in airlines go hand in hand. And you, besides being a pilot, you also speak professionally about diversity and trust for big brands and to huge audiences across you've spoke at the Air Force Academy. Obviously, it would make sense that a lieutenant colonel would speak there. But talk a little bit about that. And when we come back, we have some time before the break, but when we come back from the break, we're also going to continue talking about this. But how has dealing with diversity, because I've seen some ugly people bring up a lot of things, and skin color comes up when they're being told to take a mask off. I've seen just ugly behavior. How do you handle that with an airline? You're the captain, right? You've got the wings. It's a big thing. You're also in the Air Force. You're a lieutenant colonel. That comes with a lot of respect from all of us in the enlisted ranks. We understand what that means. How do you treat that with both roles heavy on your heart? You're responsible for these people that you're flying. You're also a lieutenant colonel, and you understand the preciousness of life and people, telling them how they're exercising their freedoms and other many things. I'm sure they tell you about the Constitution that, of course, you know nothing about because you're just a lieutenant colonel. So tell us a little bit how you've dealt with that. So when we come back from the break, I'm gonna ask a couple other questions that deal with flying in 2020 and talk about speaking and how that role, because there's another industry that's been affected by 2020. So we come back from the break, a little more with Lieutenant Colonel Jason Harris. How do you handle that with an airline? You're the captain, right? You've got the wings. It's a big thing. You're also in the Air Force. You're a lieutenant colonel. That comes with a lot of respect from all of us in the enlisted ranks. We understand what that means. How do you treat that with both roles heavy on your heart? You're responsible for these people that you're flying. You're also a lieutenant colonel, and you understand the preciousness of life and people, telling them how they're exercising their freedoms and other many things. I'm sure they tell you about the Constitution that, of course, you know nothing about because you're just a lieutenant colonel. So tell us a little bit how you've dealt with that.
Yeah, as a pilot in the airline, the reality is that our job is to ensure that we get passengers from point A to point B safely. And if there's guidance from the CDC or any other governing body that dictates that we need to do something for safety, for example, we have to wear our seatbelts when we're in the back of an aircraft, then we have to abide by those rules and regulations to ensure that we protect everyone's safety involved, right? And if you don't want to wear a mask, that's your prerogative. But then apparently you don't respect the other people who are willing and desire to wear a mask and desire to get to their destination safely. And I personally am not here to debate what your thoughts are about a mask. If that violates your constitutional rights as you see it and as you interpret the Constitution that's in your back pocket, I could care less. The same as a lieutenant colonel, right? When you come into my building, in my office to go and do military work, I could care less about what your pocket Constitution says. I could care less about what your personal interpretation is. At the end of the day, the rules have been set. And at the end of the day, we have to follow those rules. And so sometimes people, they misconstrue certain things to say that it is a violation of something or that it can be misconstrued as a diversity issue. No, this is a safety issue.
Yeah.
this is not a diversity issue, right? And I get why some people want to make it that way. But bottom line, when it comes to the aviation industry, when it comes to the military, when those two worlds converge, and we're talking about wearing a face mask, or we're talking about other safety protocols as it pertains to what we are dealing with COVID-19, dude, got to follow the rules, right? And I've made it a point that when I'm forced with having to make some of those decisions, that I always ensure that I see the humanity involved, right? And so I think that sometimes we've lost that idea from COVID-19 to civil unrest, social unrest 2020, right? The reality is that some of us, we have lost the ability to see the humanity in each other. Some of us, we don't slow down to actually go, let's have a conversation. And let's try to meet each other halfway. And let's try to respect each other. Let's try to respect our boundaries. Let's try to respect our perspectives. And then figure out how do we come to a solution and let's get moving, right?
Absolutely.
And I think when we look at it from that perspective, it makes it so much easier for us to put a mask on, hop in the back of an airplane, fly a couple of thousand miles, get you to and from your destination safely without any incident and without anybody feeling like their personal rights were trampled on, their constitutional rights were trampled on, as well as that their humanity was respected.
Absolutely. We're talking about things affected by COVID-19, and obviously, Jason, that has been affected by COVID-19. So tell us what that's been like going from airline industry affected, speaking affected, and how have you adapted and overcome? We love to keep that motto going. You know, we're both vets. It's a big-time Marine Corps motto for us, for sure. How have you adapted and overcome for this industry? And then we'll come back and find out how people can get in touch with you, because you are an amazing speaker, and I'm pretty sure you're doing virtual speaking. But how have you adapted and overcome to the speaking tour also being affected?
Yeah, Eric. So the challenge, of course, was that things got turned on its head, and it was something that was so sudden and something that was so unexpected for everyone. And so it took a little bit of time to understand what was going to happen. Some of us thought that this was going to be a short-term kind of disruption, if you would, to our business model, or a short-term disruption to our schedules. And what we realized is that this wasn't going away. And so the first thing that I personally had to do, and as well as some of my clients that I've worked with, that we had to do to adapt to what was going on around us, and the changes that were dynamic, as well as some of the changes that were going to be permanent changes, was we had to come to an understanding that we had to provide ourselves an understanding and expectation that things would forever be different. And then beyond that, I had to decide to give myself a fair measure of grace to recognize that this is not something you plan for. And there was no adapting and overcoming without first starting with a fair measure of grace. And then from there, I had to realize, like, okay, there are clients of mine that are rescheduling events until 2021. There are other clients who are canceling events, and then there are some clients that we were able to create virtual opportunities for. You know, I've got a couple of clients coming up in the month of October. We'll basically be doing some pre-recorded speeches. I'll pre-record my keynote events for them, and then we'll do kind of a live Q&A. So it's been really fun to adapt to the situation and then to overcome those different challenges along the way, and then figuring out how to rebalance, how to reprioritize my job as a professional speaker or my business as a professional speaker and consultant, and then reprioritizing my airline job, and then reprioritizing my roles and responsibilities in the military. Because as you stated, I still have to respond to COVID things or different natural disasters in my role as a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force Reserve. So I've actually started doing a lot more military work because all of the different disasters that are happening, from the wildfires across the nation to the hurricanes that are happening across the nation, to also the COVID-19 responses that we've had from the military environment. And that is part of my primary role as a Air Force officer and reservist currently.
I love it. So before you go, I love all of this, and I am happy that you are a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, because having the other two industries very much affected by COVID, it's good that you have that protection. I know you have a beautiful family, and that's the number one priority. Us military guys and gals are very much about protecting our family. So that's the most important asset. At least you have that. So we're blessed that you have that. So many don't. So it's good that, see, military service does pay off. See, that's why the 3% are out here. That's because we're awesome. We know. So how can people get a hold of you, check out your work? I know that you've got a couple different projects going. This is the portion of the show where you get to plug away for a minute about everything on how to connect with Jason and learn more about you.
Yeah, the easiest way is they can go to my website, www.jasonoharris.com. So jasonoharris.com. Obviously, I am not Irish for those who can see me, but it's jasonoharris.com, or you can send me an email at jason@jasonoharris.com. And if you really want to get in touch with me quickly, feel free to text me at 719-203-7257. Again, you can email me, jason@jasonoharris.com, or you can send me a text at 719-203-7257, and I'll be glad to engage anybody about anything, any topic that's within my purview as necessary.
I love it. I want to thank you, Bud, for joining us today. It's been great having you on. A lot of people always have questions about the airlines industry, especially. It's just been crazy. We see the videos. I want to have you back on. I want to talk in October, like to kind of do a segment talking about diversity a little bit longer. I'd like to talk about that because I think it's something as we go through, not just the election, but I think a lot of people need to have that tough talk and understand what it means. I think a lot of people don't really understand it, and you deal with it both in uniform, in both uniforms, I'm sure you deal with it, and on stages in your suit, which, by the way, shout out to the only other guest ever to rock this beautiful flower on their lapel. Says something about the guest that we select on our show. It goes with the host, my friend. So I want to thank you, Bud, for joining us today. So thank you very much, Jason Harris, for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Eric. I really appreciate it. It's been a fantastic event, and I really appreciate that.
Awesome. Everybody else, we will be right back to close out today's show, so stay tuned. We'd like to thank today's guests for joining us here on To The Point, the wonderful Matt Kachera and Lieutenant Colonel Jason Harris joining us today to learning about the airline industry. If you'd like to be a guest or know anyone that would like to be a guest, feel free to email us at hello@tothepointtv.com. Of course, follow us on all the socials. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And of course, we air weekdays live on Biz TV. That's right, Biz TV. Check out Biz TV. You can check us at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, or 5 p.m. Eastern and 2 p.m. I swear, I haven't had enough coffee today, folks. But yeah, make sure you check us out on Biz TV. You can also check us out after. We will be rebroadcasting on YouTube and Facebook, so go check us out there. Again, thank you to everybody who tuned in today. We have a great show coming up for tomorrow. We're going to recap Week 2 in the NFL, an injury-plagued Week 2 in the NFL, and talk about Thursday night's game and Week 3 coming at you. So, as always, I'm your host, Eric Mitchell. Be safe, be strong, be smart, and God bless America.
Let's get to the point with Eric Mitchell. Let's get to the point with Eric Mitchell. We gon' talk about sports and the politics. You gon' hear what you've been needing and then you're dismissed. Let's get to the point with Eric Mitchell. Let's get to the point. Sit and enjoy. This is Eric Mitchell, he the host of the show. Get to the point. He is the voice. We needed this, something more. This a daily show that's known for politics and the sports. Ain't no limit to whoever you may see at this point. To celebrities, Eric he's beast in the joint. As a veteran, put him at ease, then anoint. Every conversation can never be disappointed. Whether tragic or it's happy, Eric will cover whatever's happening. Whether it be your gymnast, toe tapping, talking about nearly any athlete, not taking a back seat. You're never gonna get it past T. Everybody running from it, it's a stampede. But he's on it like this man who took that knee. Mr. Mitchell's way too crafty. Let's get to the point.